Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our channel where we talk mainly SEO and marketing. And today I have a fantastic guest that I guess you all know because he is everywhere. He's in every podcast, he's in every conference, he shares his knowledge and his love for SEO and for our industry. Martin, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm so happy you joined the channel.
Thank you, man, and thank everyone for tuning into this episode. It's a very kind introduction. Yeah, we certainly try and get around to different events and certainly happy to talk about all aspects of SEO in particular, but also, all aspects of marketing in very competitive niches, very competitive sectors. That's a major kind of focus of us.
And you are very well known in our industry. You are one of the honest agencies, the one that tell you things as they are, honest branding and honest approach. I've worked with you in past, so highly recommend it if anyone is looking for a great SEO and content agency. If you want to introduce your agency shortly, that would be fantastic. And then we jump to the topic of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So a very kind personal introduction and even kinder agency introduction. So I'm Martin, marketing director at ICS Digital and ICS Translate. As Ivana said, we're predominantly an SEO-driven agency with a big heritage in terms of content creation and content production. But we handle lots of different things that are related to search. So things around digital PR, link building, certainly these days a big focus on boosting AI visibility in a meaningful way, not just a vanity way. Translation is a major focus of us as an agency, given the multilingual work that we do across many sectors. So there's lots of different things. So all of those different services are rooted in the original founding principles of SEO and content. But the team has grown in all sorts of direction into paid media, into influencer, into all sorts of different sectors.
Wonderful. And today we're going to be talking how your agency helps big brands, mainly in our niche, to succeed within SEO. And I came up with this topic because I worked with you when I was in big brands, and I know how much you helped us through so many things when we struggled, either with content leaks or even when we overlook something technical. So I want to focus on this because I know this is a very strong thing for you, very strong point. So can you tell us what are the main differences about working with huge brands that are established and small brands that are maybe just starting? What is the difference what is the approach you give to each?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main difference is on a base level is the potential resources that are available. And in practical reality, it doesn't mean those resources will be available to you. But usually when we look at what works in search for a big company in a very competitive sector like iGaming or like certain niches of finance or adult or health or law, usually there are things that can be fixed. An external pair of eyes can look and see things where, due to the kind of sprawling online footprint, all of these different moving parts, there's usually something that as an external observer, we can say, right, this is something that we can improve upon. And because it's such a big machine, it's such a big brand, there'll be outsized benefits to making that improvement. Sometimes some very small fixes can have a really big knock-on effect in positive terms. I guess the other side of it is when you're looking at purely growth, so not just fixing things, usually there is at least scope for a big brand to have internal resources that you can draw upon. Let's say a really clever dev team. Obviously internal SEOs, they're some of our best allies and our best friends, and we try and support and work alongside as one team. That's a great benefit because as an external agency, you want to benefit from the internal knowledge of people that have been working there and who see things firsthand. Sometimes it can be tempting as an external agency to think you know it all, but really there's some very good reasons why some things were not done in SEO and other things that may already be planned. And it's about how you can fit in with those plans in the most effective way. So certainly if there is internal resource, internal expertise, at a big company, that can be a major advantage. Whereas sometimes small companies, you might have an internal marketing team of a couple of people. They're trying to do everything. They can't possibly be a specialist. Even if they do have specialist skills, they can't possibly have a lock on what is happening across the entire company. So they're not necessarily sitting there with lots of data to support you or things that we can work together on. You're there more to guide them, which is no bad thing, but it just means that sometimes when you do work with a bigger entity, there are more advantages. Beyond that, sometimes there's more money. But then again, if the size of the challenge or the size of the task requires more budget, then it's not necessarily more profitable for us as an agency. It just means we're doing more. Um, so for us, it's really more about the ability to get things done rather than the budget. It's more about, can there be a level of collaboration with internal stakeholders that means you're able to do more? And is there already existing knowledge and an existing footprint that you can improve upon? You can do a bit of spot the difference and see what's already going well, what can be improved, what can we apply from learnings with other companies and bring that to bear with this new company. So yeah, there's definitely some advantages with big entities, also some disadvantages as well, but certainly this is kind of where we try and fit in. And one of the main things is not to come in being too presumptuous, with a cookie cutter plan, thinking you know it all as an agency. Really, you're there to fact find with the internal team and to make sure that you're setting realistic goals, ambitious goals, and measuring what matters to an organization of that scale and complexity. Because if you're doing good work but nobody knows about it, that's not a great recipe for future collaboration. So a lot of things have to come together, I would say. And I don't know if that's your experience, Savannah. You've worked with so many different types of brands over the years. Maybe that changed with some of what you've seen or less so. I'm not sure.
I think what you said here is extremely important, and many times it's not seen as such, that the external agency comes to support the internal team, is not there to replace you, is not there to have a war with you. Sometimes I see
Mm,
that in a smaller places, usually they are like so protective, they're not going to give you data, they're not going to help you. But once you are working on something, and big brands have tons of technical issues, legacy issues, budgeting fights, everybody has got their thing, we developed a tunnel vision. And I
mm,
remember you actually helped us see outside of tunnel vision. So I think people need to get over it, and so many things should be done by external agents. For example, in my opinion, link building, because you don't want to have your company email attached to, hey, I want to buy a link. So that's where agency comes in. Of course, you pay the premium. You cannot get it
mm,
for the prices admin, but then you have the risk and all the work around it and negotiating. And as well, content. I think buying content or translation is always cheaper than having internal team. And as well, because of the size of your team for links or for translation, the quality is simply higher than the internal one, because then you have got one person for Norwegian, for paid media, social media,
mm.
SEO, and they cannot be expert in everything. So I think if you manage to work as one team, it's great. I think that's a huge advantage. And I always say you should have external eyes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because otherwise, let's say in this case, this Norwegian member of staff, they're there to do one job and then they end up getting roped in to do five jobs. And sometimes, there's people who say that, if an internal team member does the job, they will care more. I would say that's probably wishful thinking from a lot of CEOs. Like, if it's your own company, then of course you care and you want to work all of the hours. If you're just, a salaried employee at a 1,000-person company, if we're talking about some of these big companies, why would you hurt yourself? Why would you take on extra stress when the company has the budget to make your life easier? That's how you build up real resentment with teams. So it's also a case where somebody might be a native language, speaker, but they're not necessarily well equipped to do marketing copy or persuasive ad copy, or even to apply keyword research in the correct way. Sometimes, and this is all of us, this is including, some of what we've done for ourselves at our agency, you can end up taking a bit of a, inside out view of the world rather than outside in. And sometimes you can forget or not even realize how your customers are searching and how that has changed. Maybe they use incorrect or informal words to search, but you, with your internal processes and your internal guidelines, are focusing in on the correct or technical term, and you're misaligning with the customers. So I think having that external perspective is useful, and it's good not to overwork internal teams and take advantage of their skills just because they happen to be there. And it's the same with link building as well. You can create a good internal link building team, but there are certain economies of scale that come with doing it with one agency or a variety of agencies. And, you know, publishers typically will be a bit more likely to negotiate if with an entity that buys from them multiple times per month, rather than even a big company that might only ever buy from them once. So this is where you might be able to get some price advantages. And it's also, we don't want to have like a toxic relationship with your agency, but you probably can be more direct and honest and critical of an agency partner than you can an internal colleague who you have to work with all the time. So if an internal colleague creates a few articles and they're okay, they might not want you telling them what to improve, and you might not want to give them that feedback because you have to work with them. So what happens is you settle for mediocre content. Whereas if it's an agency, you can say, look, it must be like this. Please apply our tone of voice. Here's the keyword research. Please apply this type of thinking. And because they're on the hook to get paid by you, and it's not a personal thing, they're not going to take that in some kind of personal or emotional way. They'll take on your feedback and want to get the right result to make sure you are happy as a client, because they want you to say nice things about them next time you're in a bar with somebody else that can, work with them. So I think sometimes having things become less personal is very helpful when you're scaling, particularly in a bigger organization, where there's disadvantages if people start to feel like they're being taken advantage of, or they realize that budget is available, but you're, kind of cheaping out by making them work double time to do something that an agency partner could do much faster.
Here I'm going to follow up on two things. One, this is the thinking. You speak Slovak, you can do our language, our content in Slovak. I get this on LinkedIn a lot, like, can you help us with Slovak content? No, I can't. It is my first language, but I can't write in Slovak. I forgot our grammar. I don't live in Slovakia for half of my life. And second of all, I don't know how to write about slots in Slovak. I don't even know how to write it in English. And as well, if I get invited to SEO conference in Slovak, I'm like, sorry, I can't. I never spoke about SEO in Slovak. So just because you speak the language doesn't make you expert. Number one, you need to be passionate about that thing or at least have an expertise. And number two, I think, and this is the biggest potential from external consultant or agency. You work with so many other people, so you see things, you are exposed to so many things that are happening. That if you are just with one company, let's say for 10 years, you might not experience it and you don't know the possibilities. So I think agency doesn't only bring great content or good links or help you with technical things, but they open your eyes to what's going on right now, because you can't know it. You can't. If you have 20 customers in iGaming and I work with one brand, it does not compare. It just does not compare the knowledge. Knowing all of the playing field, really. I think you can leverage it for people much better.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. And also, this isn't necessarily agencies being cleverer. I mean, a lot of the findings that we uncover, it's literally just because we have the luxury of looking across dozens of clients and seeing what is a trend that is happening. And then you can spot what is happening with one client that is really great for them, but it's not part of the trend. So you shouldn't go and advise similar things to other clients. And what kind of things are happening across a range of clients, then you can then advise, not sharing any anonymous, any kind of identifying data, but you can see, right, this is looking at 100 brands, we can see factually this is a trend that's making things more successful. Or we've noticed that 2 or 3 clients are not growing as quickly as we expected. Let's have a look at that and diagnose it so that we don't make a future strategy that's going to replicate something that is starting to come out of date. So you're fixing things before they become an issue. And again, that's not necessarily being really super clever. It's just having availability of the data. So that's something I think is really, really handy. And it's something I think a lot of clients can get more in terms of value from their agencies. You should be asking them not to like cough up exclusive data or somebody else's insights, but you can say, what have you noticed? What's going on at the moment? And I think that's something that agencies love to be asked, because they're not necessarily going to proactively recommend things or bring things up if they think that you might not want to hear it or that you might not be in the right mode to hear it. But if you're open to having more open conversations, I think that's something that agencies are very happy to share, and it's a good way to get value out of them. Certainly, when you're trying to make sure that you're justifying budgetary expenditure. It's not just about what they're doing. It's about what kind of insights can they give. And you, as a business owner or somebody in charge of a business unit or in charge of a business priority, you can still make the business decision, but you're getting on more data, which is priceless, really, I think.
Knowledge is everything. I mean, everybody can buy that link, but knowledge about maybe how the placements on that link should work. So I'm going to ask you right away, because you basically suggested it. What's trending right now? What is it something that you would want the clients to know? Like,
Yeah,
oh my goodness, everybody's doing parasite. Jump on that train.
sure.
What is it for you that you observed that might be the winning edge?
I mean, I do think Parasite is full of entertainment value as an observer. This is not something that we specifically offer, but it is a fast-moving world, and it is entertaining to see some weird sites popping up, including one of my former employers. Somebody bought that old website and used that for Parasite SEO. So that was quite a surprise to me to see. This is a former employer who their company was sold to a much larger entity, and that larger entity clearly let the old website lapse, and somebody snapped it up for Parasite reasons. So that was a bit of a surprise. So I think that's always going to happen, and I think a lot of the people that are really into Parasite SEO are, well, a lot of really clever people, really motivated people, and they're working at a very kind of high capability. I think for a large organization, having that attention to detail and snapping stuff up and being able to pivot really rapidly, it doesn't necessarily fit very well with some of these bigger organizations and also their risk appetite. I think one thing that big and small companies are talking about is inevitably AI. And this is something that we're keen to talk about sensibly and not in a kind of opportunistic way, because there's certainly a lot of things that we are able to identify just through trends, and it seems to be chiming with what people have already said in terms of the value of structured data and schema markup taking on importance now that it never really had 10 years ago when we were getting all this pressure to do it. It seems to be much more important now for AI to surface, relevant entities in specific searches. So making sure you're being really clear about that. And also link building is taking on increased importance when it comes to citations and having a wider footprint that is educating LLMs, but it's also giving them material to cite, because it seems like they share Google's prejudice in favor of big brands, and they also share Google's prejudice in favor of sites that have a broader network online. They they trust more what other websites say about you than what your own site says about you, which you'd think you would be less crude than that, but we're seeing awesome and sometimes unexpected results just from quite purposeful link building. I guess related to that, we have literally today, at the time of recording, launched distinctiveness intelligence, which is the ICS view of the essential elements of AI in terms of what we see as being the areas of marketing more generally that make a brand distinctive in online search for information retrieval by LLMs, but also to be memorable for actual users who are carrying out searches with a corresponding kind of impact on trust. So that's things like taking a blended view of SEO and AIO, if you want to call it, for organic search and organic media coverage, traditional PR, digital PR with a link focus, certainly technical SEO, thinking about site structure and the content that's held on websites in um, a more succinct, usable way, and thinking about how we can make sure pages don't compete with one another, so that we're not causing dilemmas for search engines or AI platforms. So it's really clear what the best information is on the best page and why that warrants being cited. And then just different aspects of that through into thinking how the brand itself is seen online through even consistency of design, consistency of colors, interfaces, terminology, and even how that is seen in the search across paid media. So this is kind of what we've launched today, distinctiveness intelligence, and it's quite a sweeping approach based upon yes, some kind of clever analysis, but also just lived experience of what seems to be working in the type of sectors that we work in, which is typically very competitive, typically very regulated. Um, but you might see things move even faster for, less sharp sectors. So we have a focus for this for e-commerce, for travel, and others. So I guess that's the broad sweep of things, and it's also, I guess, where we have taken action as an agency to develop some solutions and packages and approaches that are aligned to that.
And now, an important question: what kind of skill you see missing across companies? Because
Mm,
I feel, and I see, like, I trained people many years ago, and they're still doing the same approach. They
mm.
just didn't upscale anything, their knowledge, because it worked. So it's still working, even though it's not. Do you see lack of education, or is there a specific skill that you think huge companies are missing? Or is it like closing their eyes because AI is coming, but it's not for us?
Yeah,
Is there some specific trait of a big companies that
I,
should be
I,
changed?
I think it can be tempting if you're part of a big company to, focus on what will keep you in the job rather than what might be the next level for growth. And I think that's something. I don't think you can teach motivation. I think you've either got it or you haven't. And it's almost inevitable that if there is a company with 1,000 people or 2,000 people, there will be some people who are not particularly motivated. I think for us as an agency, it's not to, call them out, but it's about how we can align what we're doing with their interests. So it's about thinking what kind of things can we do to capture their attention where they can see that they're not going to put themselves up for any risk here. We're not going to replace them in any way. We're going to support them in what they're already doing, but just increase the tempo, increase the results, and kind of hopefully make things be more effective for the company as a whole. So I think that's probably the downside with some big companies is if there isn't that shared mission, and it is hard because sometimes people do lose a bit of focus because you think, well, what can I contribute in a company of 1,000? But there's always something, and there's always ways to take on new knowledge. So I think that's the key. There's also lots and lots of very very well informed people at big companies who are looking and pushing for the next big thing, and they are keen to hear from agencies. I think the main thing for those people is to be able to apply critical thinking and ask the right questions because there's so many agencies that will patronize you, that will give you a simple answer when the answer is complex. They will try to flatter you, they will try to persuade you, they will try and say something back to you that you've already said to them and you're not any further forward. So it's about critical thinking and thinking, what value am I getting here? Are they respecting me? Or are they just trying to flatter me to get my business? And I think that's a really key, that critical thinking and ability to ask really good questions. Not aggressive questions, but find out why do you think that? Why are you suggesting this thing to me? And the right agency will also not take that personally. They'll be able to give data, get into a conversation with you. Like nobody wants to be told, "Oh, prove yourself and tap dance for me." Nobody wants that. But most agencies, they will want to say, "Well, this is our rationale. This is our data. This is what we've done before. This is what we've done in a similar industry to yours. This is what we think it might work. Obviously, X, Y, and Z might mean it doesn't work." I like talking on that level, looking at what is realistic, what could happen, what might not happen. But to push things forward, we've got to have an element of experimentation, and it's better when people are honest. And I think that's kind of where the best skill for internal staff at these big companies is critical thinking, maintaining personal motivation, and thinking what can I usefully get out of an agency in terms of output, but also in terms of insight, as you said, Evelyn. And also, yeah, so it also de-risks things for you as a client because if your boss or your boss's boss or your boss's boss's boss says, "Why are we doing this?" You've got your data, you've got your business case. You've not just done something because some smooth talking agencies persuaded you, or because you've jumped into something because it's trendy. You've actually figured out why we're doing this. And there can still be uncertainties, and there can still be, a will to experiment, but at least you can communicate to them, we're doing this because of X, Y, and Z. And we're not going all in to like waste money, but this is what we're doing. I think that's kind of what I would recommend people do more often.
Well, and I think you touched on something that irritates most of us. Either you are a consultant agency or internal, like head of is the next new shiny thing
Yep.
that people just love to jump on it and abandon everything that was working for them. Like, who cares that this website was making money? Now this trick is working. Let's do that. I find it so irritating because yes, try new things, but don't abandon something you already had. But sometimes you get this decision coming from, I don't know, people that don't care or don't know or just are mesmerized by what's
Mm.
going on right now, and they ditch something that was working for something that might work because everybody else is doing it. How do you handle this? I find that super, super difficult to explain. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, we can recover this. This is still making you money. This is your make money thing. Build something new, but save what you have and invest in what you have. I see it happening quite a lot, and anyone in mainly in SEO is getting frustrated by it because we get every new trick out there. Is canonical tricks, there is
Mm.
parasite SEO, there's drop domains, VPNs are coming back, traffic push, and people just forget to do a good SEO, and it irritates the living hell out of me.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult, and it's one of these things where once again, even in quite a technical industry or a technical discipline, human skills are really important. So all of us, I think, if that does irritate, it's about trying to trying to bury those feelings and think pragmatically, what do I need to do here? Because we've seen it a lot, and it's why it's taken a year or more for us to develop distinctive intelligence. This approach to AI. We didn't want to just jump on things and say do X, Y, and Z. So I think it's about acknowledging the reality, which might be the CEO says everything must be AI, and that's what's got their attention. And then thinking, okay, how can I respect that, but also get things done that I need to get done? So it's about trying to think what methodologies are going to give them what they want, but also have a good benefit to the day job, the things that we know are important. And maybe through that you can, unlock budget. And it's not dishonest, it's not misleading, but it's just okay, politically, which is like a fact of life at big organizations, we need to do a little bit for this person, and in return, we get this for us. So I think certainly when it comes to AI, this is something that people keep talking about. And I think we can say, look, we've got to be realistic. We need to be realistic about the actual traffic that's going to be generated from this. So, let's set realistic targets here, and also let's have a discussion about if it's informational queries, how much value do those informational queries have for you as a brand? Could you be diverting too much attention onto this versus more transactional queries where traditional methods or PPC or something else can be the way to get actual, FTDs when it comes to iGaming or conversions when it comes to e-com or whatever it happens to be. I think that's really key, is trying to have those conversations to make sure that you're not dismissing what they want, but making sure they've got an understanding of what's realistic, and then using that attention and energy and eventual budget to bring everything else forward. I think that's kind of where compromise is important. And it's also where having the insights to bring to these senior stakeholders is really important as well, because they don't want you to be sullen or just to go no or do something resentfully. They want you to come up with solutions. They don't want to be told no. But if they can be guided and encouraged, and you can also get your day job done more easily with the resources that you unlock, then that can end up being a win-win, hopefully.
And my last question, what is the rest of the year 2026 look like for SEO? What do you think? Are we going to see
Oh my goodness.
broken SERPs like now, complete dumpster with parasite and drop domains, or are we going to see a cleanup? Are we going to see better SEO coming back to us?
Well, a lot of it comes down to like Google and search engines and their inaction to kind of enforce their own rules. So it's quite interesting recently, again, at the time of recording this, some quite infamous brands that are very known for parasites seem to at last be getting penalized, manually it seems. So if that shows willingness, then I think that will have a knock-on effect. If the biggest players doing this are facing more challenges, then you might find the hype dies down and other people will, not spend so much time on that side of things. I think hopefully, I would love to see a more customer-focused SERP emerge, because right now, like, it's just ridiculous the amount of real estate taken up by an AI overview that might not be terribly helpful. Then chunky ads, and then inevitably some kind of Wikipedia or news site or something that's not particularly helpful, then you get to the real stuff. I would like to think that the SERP will improve over the next year. I mean, I know this is something Google pays lip service to. I really love to see that happening. I think everybody across the whole industry is, conscious that affiliates and information-driven sites have had a real hard time. I would really love to see an easier time of things for those type of brands, especially for so many who have invested in qualitative content, EEAT, all the things they're told to do, video, multi-channel. I would love to see some of these brands really come back with some growth and some impact, and see them take their rightful place, not just in iGaming, but in other information-heavy sectors as well. That'd be really nice to see. And I think the other thing that's going to be throughout everything is just the need to navigate your own path, take on new information, but don't jump into any particular element of hype. Use your internal experience, but then again, get as much useful info as you can from partners, friends in your industry, agencies, and be mindful again of that human dimension. If you are at a big company, if you're at a big brand, how to get things done is give people what they want, make sure you get a bit for yourself, and then you work out to move this, oil tanker of a company forward. That's kind of one of the biggest challenges. It's not often the challenge is lack of information, it's ability to get things done. And I think the right agencies will help you to do that. They're not going to compete with you. They're not going to try to supplant you. They're going to be there to try and support your growth as an individual. And we see our individual clients as heroes. We love them. But through that, you can then end up doing good things for the company overall.
Thank you so much. I cannot but agree on the wishful part that good SERPs come back to us when I actually Google something, and I don't have to Google 7 more times to actually find what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And in the end, I don't have to leave for ChatGPT. So hopefully the dumpster gets cleaned up and it will be helpful again. Thank you so much. I love talking to you. I really appreciate that you took this half an hour of your life to speak to me and to talk to our audience. Thank you, Martin.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Absolutely. Thank everybody for listening as well. It's been a great pleasure.